Okay, I thought I'll do another one of these videos. This time I want to introduce you to local LLM installations that allow you to kind of work in a private environment rather than sort of relying on sort of an open environment that might result in sort of sensitive data potentially being shared in a way that you might not be fully aware of, given like the terms and conditions of platform providers. Um, the system that I want to introduce you to is called Anything LLM. It sort of works in conjunction with any AI provider, but allows you to, for example, engage in conversations with documents that you store locally on your own device. And so it's very much more sort of privacy preserving, so to say. So let me just sort of delve right into it. Um, Let me share the screen so you'll see this. So the solution is called Anything LLM. It's actually a standalone app that you can download. You can also install it via a Docker image and then sort of deploy it on a local instance. There's sort of some advantages to have a Dockerized image. But you can literally just download it for Apple Silicon or Windows or whatever your setup is. And you can just on a Mac, you can just drag and drop this into the applications folder. You will need to have an Ollama installation, a local Ollama installation that allows you to deploy local large language models. So large language models that you can just pull and then sort of deploy locally. I just have here an example. This is my Ollama installation. You can see, I have Ollama lists all the models that have been downloaded. There's DeepSeek R1 with 70 billion parameters. There's Qwen 2.5. The latest version was actually most recently downloaded only 8 weeks ago. And of course, we've got, Llama 3 from Facebook. There's also an embeddings model that is quite useful, in particular when you sort of work with documents. And you want to embed sort of large documents that can be sort of where it can be quite efficient to sort of do that locally. So once you've got Ollama installed, once you've got the Anything LLM downloaded, you can literally just open the Anything LLM and it looks like a workplace like this. You can actually just create a new workspace. Let's call this summary. And what's very interesting is if you can go, you can sort of configure the whole instance of your Anything LLM, sort of like system-wide, or you can also like do configurations within a specific workspace. So let's just go into the specific workspace. So here there is is a workspace summary. You can general settings. You can turn on specific large language model providers. There's a system default or a workspace default. Now, when we want to work with a local LLM, we would work with Ollama, but you can see you can also provide information in terms of an OpenAI API use or Azure or other type of AI compute providers. Um, let's use Ollama that's locally installed. It automatically retrieves from the Ollama endpoint what's going on here? From the Ollama endpoint, it automatically retrieves this list of models that we have. You saw that earlier on the terminal window. And so we can just take, for example, on this one, because I want to showcase a simple document retrieval task, we can go with Qwen 2.5 as sort of a decent model. And there's some further sort of system prompts that you can already provide for your workspace so that, the LLM sort of knows in what kind of work environment it is. Think of this as basically just sort of activating the sort of some nets and some connections in the neural network based on a system-wide prompt. So that can be useful, especially when you have a workspace to which you want to do quite repetitive tasks that are very similar. Yeah, that's about it. You can set the temperature. Default is usually fine, unless you're in a setting that allows you to fine-tune the temperature parameter here. What's also interesting is when you actually have documents that you're sort of giving to the system. The documents are being embedded using an embeddings model. The specific embeddings model here is something that you can set in the system prompt. So in the system settings, so if you go to the open system settings, you can add, for example, you can add a specific embedder that you want to use for your embeddings. For example, here again, I'm using the Ollama endpoint using this embeddings model that I've shown you in terms of that's the latest sort of embeddings that I've installed. Again, in some settings, you might want to set the embedder to have shorter chunk lengths. There's a few sort of approaches here. Also, when you sort of set documents, depending on the document nature, you might want to reduce the text chunk size and increase the text chunk overlap. That essentially is, so if when you have a big document, it gets chunked into smaller bits, and then the overlap determines essentially how big the individual chunks are overlapping, cross-overlapping. But that's sort of all not so important. But I mean, all of these are typically tuning parameters that are important to incorporate depending on the type of documents that you want to work with. So let's go back to the workspace. I just wanted to show you how you can use this. Um, you can create your own document dump, so to say here. These are all documents. They could be texts, CSV files, spreadsheets, PDFs, and so on, that you can deposit, and then you can deploy them into your specific workspace. So you can move them over, into a workspace. Here's just a few sample documents. You can move them over into the workspace. They're then embedded, and then they're essentially loaded into the context of your local workspace instance. But just as is possible with OpenAI, or any other sort of large language model provider, or compute provider, really, you can just attach a document. Sometimes this is a bit buggy. Actually, let me just mention one thing. So when you go here, you see that the vector database that's currently attached, I mean, now it's created it already, but when I first opened this, it's at 0, as in like there is 31 vectors that are stored in the vector database that represents the embedded documents that have been attached to this vector space, to this workspace. And so again, this is where the embeddings the embedding setting actually can play a role. Oops, okay, this disappeared. So let's attach this document. It says here, file embedded. Again, using the embedding setting that are for the whole anything LLM instance. And then we can summarize this document. Oh, okay, actually, sorry, one more thing. Here, the chat settings, I also want to use Ollama, and I don't want to use DeepSeek. I want to use Quinn 2.5. Update the workspace. Okay. Sometimes it's a bit buggy with the attachment of documents. It goes on. And so it describes the research method and whatnot that was used in this particular document. Again, you can sort of engage in conversations with it. The reasoning models, it really depends on what type of workflows you have in mind. But again, this is a very versatile setup. You work with your local. I've sort of done some earlier versions. Like you can sort of play around a fair bit here, drag and drop, essentially attach different corpora to your workspace. It's very useful. You can also fetch websites. Again, this is one of the reasons why digital ID is being rolled out, as I've been saying for a few years now, that essentially websites are going to ask you to authenticate access with your digital ID. because the LLMs will just sort of scrape, or AI agents can sort of do a lot of the scraping tasks. So you could, for example, here provide a website that is sort of fetched. There's also tools in terms of data connectors. This is still a bit underdeveloped, but there's great promise in this. There's also, with a local installation, you can also actually attach live documents, essentially documents that will change. Think of your inbox, think of your or some social media that you might be watching, and that gets automatically then re-indexed and re-embedded, so you can essentially converse with your inbox. All of what this will do will highlight to some extent the usefulness or the uselessness of certain user interfaces, because large language models and artificial intelligence agents probably in the not so distant future will replace a lot of the traditional user interfaces and allow us to almost converse with one another through, you know, I don't want to say telepathic environment, but in essence, it allows for the AI to sort of help us nudge one another. That are, in my vision, would be people that would be in your nudge set. So people that you care about, people that care about you. Um, and through that, essentially, sort of there might be some sort of democratization of artificial intelligence in a way that also comes with a type of oversight that is sort of designed by your network of friends and peers within an organization. I'm very optimistic about all of these techniques, but of course, there's also risk for abuse. Anyway, if you want to give this a go, I think this is one of the most user-friendly ways of engaging with AI, local installations of AI that I have seen to date. And this is a really great project. You should also obviously support it through donations. They're sort of, it's a volunteer open source effort. As I said, I have great promise, hope, and that this sort of project, which has great promise, will actually make AI much more accessible to more people on their own devices. And again, in many instances, these quantized smaller models, here I've shown you the Qwen 2.5 is a quantized version that has 4.7 gigs of memory that actually fits into most user-friendly end machines. Actually is very, very fast because it's been reduced down in terms of redundancy, in terms of data that is being captured often by very high large models with a high number of parameters and layers. Oftentimes, many of these are not even activated, which means they're kind of like just storage, but they're actually not, they're not containing actually data or information that sort of could not be arrived at through reasoning. And this is a very interesting sort of tension point, the difference between data versus reasoning. Because obviously the data at some level, the data intensity should reflect the amount of reasoning effort that might have been done to arrive at similar conclusions. I think all the solutions to all the problems in the world already exist. We know what they are. But we seem to have a hard time getting a political process or societal process going to get us moving in that direction. But I would like to think that part of this is going on, taking place. Anyways, have a go with anything LLM and Ollama. It's really great fun and a really nice tool. Thanks.